And as I stand below the immensity of the Shard, the UK's tallest building, I find myself at the northwest entry to the modernised London Bridge station. I suppose this is about as close as you can get to what you might call a main entrance. And that's because London Bridge, well, it's never been flash. It's always been a practical station, and this 21st century rebuild reflects that too. This upper concourse provides level access to the terminating platforms. Here we are at London Bridge, and you wouldn't know from looking at it, because obviously it's a bit new. This is actually the oldest terminal in London. 1836 is when London Bridge Terminal first opened, and as you can tell, there's terminus platforms and there's the through platforms. So let's have a little wander around and discover London Bridge, and then we're going to the countryside. So let's go down to the major part of the station, which is effectively at ground level. And my initial impressions are fairly good. There's been an attempt to get some light to fall into these lower levels, and the combination of concrete, wood and steel makes for a modern, less brutal feel. Oh, let's have a quick detour straight away, because I can hear the organ being played. You see, London Bridge doesn't have a public piano, rather it has a full-on pipe organ, and someone's playing it right now. This southwestern entrance leads out onto St Thomas Street, which is also where the front door of the Shard can be found. It also explains why the station doesn't really have a main entrance, as passengers can access the platforms from many directions. Re-entering from St Thomas Street, we can see that the rebuild has opened up the Undercroft, providing retail spaces and also direct access to the underground station. There's also a lovely plaque to commemorate the 1836 station, showing it against the current concourse footprint. So now let's just head out the other way to the northeast entrance on Tooley Street. And here again we can see the nature of a station, where the tracks have been raised on a viaduct since 1836. It's getting close to the time for my train to depart, so let's get through the gate line. Oh, I haven't mentioned where I'm going, have I? I thought it might be fun to travel out on the Uckfield line, as it's one that after all these years was never electrified, and so it's going to be provided by one of Southern's very small fleet of DMUs. When you're up close, the big concrete columns look great, and the escalators make for very useful light wells. Our train for Uckfield leaves from platform 10. And up we go, and at the top we're greeted by our Class 171 Turbostar. These units have been around since 2004 and are identical to the Class 170s, but they have different couplers, enabling the 171s to attach to the Southern Class 377s in an emergency. Standard class passengers look well served by comfortable seats in a 2+2 configuration. But I have paid an extra £5 today, so we can also ride along in first class. And as we enter the little first class area, there's definitely more room, although I don't think the seats are actually any wider. Still, they feel a bit more padded and they have a slight recline. Oh, and the tables are a bit larger too. Under the tables are 3-pin plugs. Now that is a bonus over standard, which doesn't have any power supplies at all. There's also reading lights and some generous overhead luggage racks. However, you do have to wonder when Southern last got round to cleaning the upholstery. Right, time for a quick look at the route to Hever. We'll leave London Bridge and run fast to East Croydon. After 2 more stops at Oxted and Hurst Green, the train enters the non-electrified branch to Uckfield, and today we'll just call at Edenbridge Town and then hop off at Hever. Now beyond Hever, the Kent countryside will give way to East Sussex and the train will continue on to Uckfield. But our little run will cover just 43.5 kilometres or 27 miles, and it is scheduled to take just 42 minutes. So our little trip out onto the Oxted line starts off with this run out of London Bridge along the Brighton main line to Croydon. Now this section was opened by the London and Croydon Railway in 1839, only 3 years after the station at London Bridge had opened. As the southeastern main line continues, well, southeasterly, we peel off behind the incinerator onto the Brighton main line and past the New Cross Gate Traction Maintenance Depot. We can run fast through the intermediate stations like Forest Hill and Norwood Junction, both now resplendent with their overground roundels. And it's just beyond Selhurst Depot that we roll into East Croydon, this station being dressed as a southern station as we start to leave London behind. After East Croydon, the train joins the Oxted line proper. The line speed on the branch varies between 60 and 75 miles per hour. That's not bad really. This more modern line dates from 1884 and features a couple of tunnels under the North Downs, including the Oxted Tunnel. Arrival at Oxted means we've now passed outside the confines of the M25 orbital motorway. Oxted is also one of the access points to the North Downs Way. The map at the station shows how easy it is to use the trains to enable you to walk the various sections. Hurst Green is a cute little Southern Railway station, and it also marks the point where we need that diesel traction. It certainly feels like a country branch line now as we pass into the fair Kentish countryside. As I said, I paid just £5 more to ride first class, with the second class fare being £10.35 return, first class being £15.55, both including my senior railcard discount. Mind you, I wouldn't say it's really worth the extra £5, but at least we know now.
Welcome aboard. We are now approaching Hever.
Let's wave the 171 off on its journey to Uckfield. And, apart from a couple of passing loops, beyond here the branch will now become single track. The old station from 1888 is now private offices, but it's lovely to see it preserved and doing useful work. But the fun about this station is that it isn't in Hever at all. In fact, you need a map to find the village and, of course, the famous castle. The station does have an extensive car park, which also appears to feature an old Southern Railway coach for some reason. As you leave, the remoteness of the station becomes more apparent. Other passengers have headed off up the drive, so I suppose we ought to follow them. Well, this feels very weird. Around 40 minutes ago we were at London Bridge. Finally, up this country lane we find what we've been looking for, a sign pointing to Hever. Now I'm on the main drag from the village of Hever to the railway station. As I'm sure VoiceOver Man's mentioned, it's interesting that you just come just a short distance away from London on a little commuter kind of train, and then you're deep in the Kent countryside, walking down a tiny little track. And you also have to dodge a few sheep in the field. Well, the village looked a bit closer on the map, but these people seem to know where they're going. What's interesting along the path is all the Kent and Sussex cleft post and rail fencing, which is usually made from locally coppiced chestnut. It certainly looks to be quite a skilled job, both making the posts and the poles and also constructing the fence itself. Finally, we're in sight of the road and I feel the village is close, which is grand as I'm in need of a beer and a bit of a sit down. Hever is best known for its large castle. In the early days it was the family home of Anne Boleyn. In the 20th century it became the home of American William Waldorf Astor, a member of the hugely wealthy Astor family. Anyway, here's the pub, time for a beer. So here I am on the bridge over the River Eden, and we're just outside Hever Castle, the home of Anne Boleyn, amongst other people. But I'm more interested in the 20th century owners, the Astors, famous, I suppose, for Titanic, amongst other things, or dying on the Titanic, some of them. Yeah, it's actually starting to rain, so I think I might walk back up to the railway station now and make my way back to London. I'll catch you a bit later. Well, I'm taking a different route to the railway station, but as you can see, it's just as countrified. Well, what can you say about a house like this? Handy for the station, but not entirely sociable. Nice pond in the front garden, though. I suppose really that's part of the narrative of this video, that we started off right in the centre of the city at the Shard and London Bridge, and then about 40 minutes later we were here in Hever. I think it's hard to underestimate just how much a village like Hever would have been completely changed by the coming of the railway. Just a little railway station up here with a goods yard, completely changing everything that happens here. When Anne Boleyn and her family owned the place way back when, they would have been pretty much completely cut off from London. By the time the Astors owned the place in the 20th century, they would have been maybe offering friends to come, just pop down on the train tomorrow evening and we'll have dinner. Well, thanks for joining me on this little trip from the heart of London, London Bridge and the Shard, out to the Kent countryside in Hever. I hope you've enjoyed it. Little wander around the village, a little bit of waffle from Johnny, and here we are. I'm just waiting now for my return train, and then I'll be doing some more things in London, and more of that to come. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate all your views and especially all your kind comments. It's really nice that you come along with me on some of these rather daft journeys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this kind of August afternoon, just getting out of the city really, and I'll see you next time.